Hi everyone, welcome to this online talk with V&A Dundee. My name is Nicole Keane and I'm the creative programmer here. Thanks to everyone from joining us from all over the world today. I know we've got a couple of people from Bradford, from London, from Dundee, obviously. It's nice to have you all here. As some of you may know, we are gearing up to open the doors to V&A Dundee again on the 1st of May. And I just wanted to thank all of our audiences, partners, members and donors for their continued support. Today, we're going to be joined by one of our assistant curators, Lauren Bassam, and artist and dance practitioner, Saoirse Amira Anis. They're going to have a wonderful in-conversation, and then that's going to be followed by an audience Q&A. Before I welcome our speakers on, I just wanted to draw your attention to a few of the Zoom functions we're going to be using today. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the talk using the Q&A function. You can find that on your bottom bar. If you'd like to use the closed captions, you can also enable these on your bottom bar. Details on how to use these all have been posted in the chat, so you can reference that. And finally, if you are going to talk about this event online, which we definitely encourage, please do tag VA at VA Dundee, and also using the socials links for the speakers, which have also been posted in the chat. That is it from me, so I'm just going to invite Saoirse and Lauren to join us by turning their video and audio on, and they can get on with their talk.
Hi everyone.
Lauren.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, welcome to a virtual V&A Dundee. As Nicole mentioned, I'm Lauren Bassam. I've been working as the assistant curator on the Night Fever exhibition, which is due to open on Saturday to the public. I asked Saoirse to come and talk with me today about at-home dancing and at-home clubbing because of our sort of shared interest in the subject. I'll sort of let Saoirse do a little bit of intro to herself as well, but I'll show you in a minute how long or how far back our sort of mutual love of dancing goes with some pictures, just so you feel a bit at home with us. But yeah, Saoirse, please introduce yourself a little bit as well, and your passion for dancing and where it comes from.
As everyone said, I'm Saoirse and I love dancing so much. I think it's probably irritating to a lot of people. It's maybe all I talk about. I guess it's such a brilliant thing to do by yourself or with other people, and I feel like it's like a center point of most of my life. And yeah, neither of us are in any way professionals. We just have like a love for moving our bodies and boogieing about the place.
I think I remember this from, we actually did go to one, we've been in clubbing together once, I think, in person in real life in Dundee. And I think it made me realise that shared connection you can have with someone because you both love moving your body.
We barely knew each other at that point too.
Yeah, exactly. So we went to a club in Dundee called Church, and it was actually the last night of the Neon Festival. And they had a band playing that I loved, but it was also followed by DJ sets. And both of us were just really tearing up the dance floor. And it made me realize that kind of how much you can love just moving your body with someone else in a space. But also, I think through this talk, you'll kind of see that you can do it online as well. And it's something that we've kind of embraced a bit across the course of the pandemic. But I'm going to share some embarrassing photos now, just for everyone to enjoy, just because it's important you know where we come from and why we are passionate about dancing. Let me just, there we go. So this, Saoirse, this is you, right? This is you.
Yeah, this is me, my mum and dad, I think in London, maybe in our old house somewhere. Yeah, it must have been London, I'm pretty wee. And I used to do this all the time, apparently. I'd just get up on the table and mimic the dancing that I saw. Which would usually be my dad dancing to old Moroccan music.
Great, it's a good first intro to dancing at home, right? And then this is me, definitely not as cool, like not on up on a table with everyone, but this is me. I'm sort of the second one into the picture with my very blunt fringe and some family friends of ours, Amy and Jake, and then my brother in the corner. And this is my family living room as a kid. And I think just out of shot is a sort of speaker deck that my dad had set up. And all of his records are all over the floor, but it was very much listening to my dad's music, dancing around the living room. That's all of us. I think it was maybe about 5 when this picture was taken. But it's a good indication of me dancing when I was little as well. And then we also found like a group shot of the two of us, both clearly fairies in the making, both having a bit of a boogie but dressed up. And I think that's another thing about dancing for yourself, even if it's at home or if it's in a club, is that sometimes you just want to get dressed up and dance. And I think this is like two little people really wanting to get dressed up and have a dance.
Yeah,
and
it's been a good few nights in the past while just putting on my nicest clothes by myself in my living room for a wee boogie.
Exactly, yeah. And there's a couple more and then we're done with the embarrassing photos so everyone can kind of stop chuckling at us. But yeah, again, me in the living room, absolutely like fist clenched, dancing away, and you sort of again dressed up sort of as part of a dance troupe, right? So it's kind of I guess what I put these pictures together because it's sort of like you can be either at home or out there, you know. It's you can be a little kid just like clenching their fists, tongue out, dancing to their favorite tune on the spot, or you can be dressed up, all glammed up, ready to go. Yeah, which is sort of the joy of it. So I guess, yeah, these pictures, although they're like very, very old, are sort of, they're a callback to our mutual love of dancing with other people, but by ourselves and at home. In a complete like about reverse turn though, I sort of want to start the talk talking about some of these sort of nights that have sprung up, I guess, as a result of the pandemic, or have predated the pandemic but really taken off because of it. And this one in particular was one that I told Saoirse about and you were amazed by when we talked about it before, which is
it's incredible.
Yeah, so it's a club called Club Matryoshka. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, please tell me. But it's named after the Russian dolls, and it's an entire club built in Minecraft. So it's on its own Minecraft server from Manila, and it was a way for a bunch of DJs in Manila to kind of create a club space online where they could perform and sort of get together, but they didn't have to do it in person. And it's sort of snowballed because of the pandemic, and it has this reputation now being like the Berghain of the online sphere, really. So this kind of like club that you have to apply to get into and like sort of reply to a questionnaire that questions you in pig Latin and sort of makes funny high cues, and then you get in and it's full of people dancing as funny little Minecraft characters, which I think is great. It's amazing.
Yeah, it looks brilliant. I'm quite annoyed that I haven't been to it. Like I didn't know about it until after the events that they've been doing. But it looks incredible, like such a nice combination of like, well, I mean, I was gonna not really combination, it's just entirely silly.
Which is sort of what dancing is about too, right? It's about dancing and making it sort of silly and fun. And I think that's what's great about this as a club experience online, is that it's completely out there, like it's really silly and like you're kind of anonymous but enjoying a space with other people too.
Yeah, but it's also like it's so beautiful because it's so intricate and it's clearly like you can, I guess, sense the like human touch that's gone into making this super bizarre, intricate space on Minecraft. It's magical and silly, which is my two favorite things in the world.
Exactly, the best things. And then another one that we also really wanted to highlight was Club Quarantine, which I think we both talked about. So this was sort of a Toronto-based collective who already made club nights pre-COVID, but who went online because of COVID. And it sort of has that feeling of a chat room, but again, it's an at-home dance party. So these are all people in different bits of the world, all kind of connecting through getting together and dancing, in their living rooms, and sort of just enjoying that and enjoying being with other people remotely, I guess. And in some senses, I think it gives you a real sense of like free expression. Like there are people clearly in this picture particularly who are just like, they're sort of oblivious to other people. They're just kind of enjoying themselves, but knowing there are other people also enjoying themselves at the same time, which I think is the experience you get on a dance floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because there's sort of dancing in your own house by yourself, and then there's maybe like an unsuccessful club night. You might be really aware of the people that you're like who's dancing with you. Whereas I feel like for me, a successful club night is where I can feel like I'm simultaneously completely alone and also surrounded by people, but surrounded by other people who are also feeling the same thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's that shared like something, whether it's music or like a shared identity. I think with this club, it's very much about being queer and the space that gives for people to express themselves online. But yeah, it's that sort of moment all together, but also apart, that you can, in some senses, recreate online, I think. And it's definitely, yeah, something that's a positive of the pandemic is that people have found a way to still do that and express themselves. Like, yeah, I guess it's a strange one to think about, that being apart, we've still been able to have that moment of joy, but we have, I think, these clubs like sort of prove that maybe a bit.
I saw a really nice quote about Club Quarantine. Well, it was like a screenshot of two comments in the chat, sorry. And one of them said, "I'm playing Animal Crossing." And the next one said, "I legit took 4 bumps of ketamine to see Charlie," which I thought was just such a lovely like contrast between the two different ways you can enjoy this at-home clubbing thing. You can be doing absolutely whatever you want. There's no pressure to like have a certain type of energy.
Yeah, we talked about that before, how like the upside of being online is that you could be having a cup of tea and just be like dancing in your chair, or you could be like, yeah, you could have your own personal strobe light, you could be like 5 drinks in. It's like, it's completely at your choice, and there's no pressure to be a certain type of person when you're choosing to log in to an experience online. You're doing it with the kind of knowledge that you're doing it on your own terms, which I think is like so important. And it's sort of, it feels like a kind of safe space for people to just kind of exist as they want, and there's no pressure, like you say, to like, you could be one or the other. You could be playing Animal Crossing or bumping cat. And I guess something about all of these experiences that they sort of also attract and promote people who you wouldn't necessarily have heard of before, or people that you really want to go and see but you've never had the opportunity to. So Club Quarantine ended up doing a sort of, they've now become part of the Boiler Room family. So they're on the Boiler Room website, their nights are promoted through that. And that's given them this massive platform that they wouldn't have necessarily had before. And it means that the DJs that were playing in Toronto to just sort of like small queer clubs in Toronto are now on this massive platform that anyone across the world can kind of tune into, which I think is really amazing. And you said that you had sort of similar thing with being able to tune into someone that you really wanted to go and see, right? So
Sarah Wild, they've been in Morocco for I think quite a lot of the lockdown, and they did a live stream of like a DJ set. I can't remember what the event was called, but it was an event that was celebrating queer people, queer musicians and artists. And it was just magical. Like, it was in Morocco, and I'm Moroccan, for anyone who doesn't know. But my experience of Morocco is just going to visit my grandparents and wandering around the city. I've never enjoyed any sort of club night or like club culture. So it was really nice to be able to like see a DJ set that Sarah was doing, who I know from in Scotland. But to be able to see them doing it in Morocco, and it was just, it was such a lovely like combination of cultures, and just being able to experience a thing that I never have and might not have been possible were it not for this sort of like movement into streaming of club nights and things.
Yeah, I think that's like, it's such an important kind of thing to build on, right? That kind of sense of like people can be together and experience things in different places. I had the same thing, not with a club night, but with one of my favorite bands. Like, they are touring for their 20th anniversary, or they would have been, and they can't now because of the restrictions and everything. So I got to see them perform online in a kind of really intimate setting, which would never have happened if I was, if they were out on tour, because it's really hard to get tickets, and you can't always get to their gigs, and then you've got to pay for the transport to get there, and like book your overnight stay if it's somewhere that's not where you are. So a bit like this, like you say, it's a different experience. It's not the same as being there in person, but it gives you something that you maybe might not have been able to have anyway. I think that's really like important, I guess, for people to kind of have those experiences, even if they're not necessarily in person. At least they're kind of having that moment of shared connection. Yeah, and I guess sort of touching on that a bit more is like Boiler Room have done a whole bunch of these different ones that kind of are from people's living rooms, and so they've had DJs DJing with all of their setup in their living rooms across the world. And again, yeah, different. You can see from the sort of title card in this slide that it's sort of, they're all from different places, and that would never happen normally. You wouldn't have like a DJ list that's so kind of like diverse in terms of where people are based, like that you've got like Brussels and Utrecht and Rotterdam and London all in one evening, and that's all in the same room. Like,
yeah,
it's all in the same room.
I saw a few of these Boiler Room streams, and it was like a competition for who could have the nicest or the most plants. Everyone had sort of like curated their own wee setup, and there was just plants growing everywhere. I thought it was fabulous.
I love it. Well, I'm really loving Mel's, like he's clearly put the alien, I guess, is it like a ukulele front and center?
Yeah.
Yes, I love this. This is my ukulele, putting it front and center. And here's my beautiful backdrop window. It's great. I think that's what it is. It's just also a little sneaky preview into people's at-home lives as well, right? Like maybe that's the other reason that streams work quite well in that sense, is that especially for marginalized communities, sort of sneaking into other people's living rooms. You're like jumping from house party to house party. You're kind of seeing everyone's like different disco balls and like fairy lights and like setups at home. It's quite nice. Yeah. I guess one thing that we did want to talk about though, and I know we talked about before, is that it isn't really completely a replacement for actually being in a club show. So these are a couple of pictures from the exhibition Night Fever. This is from the Scottish club section. This is actually from a local Dundee photographer of a club night in Dundee in reading rooms called Locarno. And then we've got some from Sub Club as well. And we were just talking before about that sort of sweat dripping off the ceiling, like touching the ceiling, touching other people is the one thing that I guess these like online experiences can't give you. They are like, they're great, but they aren't this. They aren't your kind of like can of Red Stripe crushed in your hand, like fist pumping, like just looking sweaty and a mess, but absolutely enjoying yourself. So I guess that was a caveat both me and you wanted to kind of add into this, like whilst we've loved the online experience, it's not the same as like being able to hug and touch and be with people.
I've had a few nights where I've been sort of, I guess, recreated a club night in my flat with my flatmates, and so I've still been able to get that like dancing with other people thing, but it's the sweat that you just cannot recreate. And it feels, well, it doesn't feel weird anymore because I've been going on about it for ages, but like one of the main things that I miss is just that sharing of other people's sweat, like at a gig or at a club night, and just sort of knowing, I mean, I didn't enjoy it at the time, I wasn't hyper aware of it, but now that I've not been able to do it for so long, there's just I don't know what it is. I don't know why it's so enjoyable, because it's such a weird thing to want to be sharing other people's sweat on a sweaty minion dance floor. But
there's something in that. We were slightly talking about that the other day. So we've been obviously installing this exhibition and walking around it, and the one thing that it doesn't have is the sort of smell of a club, or the kind of like the sticky floors of a club, because we're in a gallery and it's full of sort of objects from clubs and sort of the ephemera around them, but it doesn't quite have that sticky floored feel. And I guess there are some things, whilst you can kind of recreate bits of it, it's never quite the same experience as like that sweaty shared space with people. I mean, and it will come around again, we'll be able to do these things. And I think that's again that kind of like balance between at home giving you the kind of other things that in real life can't give you. So it's like more accessible, it's more easy, you don't have to dress up, you can if you want to, but then you lose that like connection and sweat and sort of that sort of like the sort of performance of a night out maybe, or the drama of it. I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is. I feel like
there's different sort of stages to a night out, and the closest I got to it was one night near the beginning of the first lockdown. Me and my flatmates turned our house into reading rooms. And we sort of two of my flatmates like left to go to the living room to do like a quick transformation, while we the other three of us stayed in the kitchen turning glasses into red stripe tins. And when we went through, one of my flatmates, Dan, was dressed as a bouncer, and he did a whole bit about, have we got ID, where have we been tonight, how much have we had to drink. And then when we got in, Tarka was taking doing like a coat check, and then she was telling us that we weren't allowed to have glass on the dance floor, and there was like a smoking area at the window. And it was so nice to like have those separate parts of it. And then I think we had a boiler room set streaming on the telly, and then we had a laptop with some sort of like visual on it. And then the night got messier. We switched everything off, and we were just sort of back in our living room as if that was us now at an after party. And it was so nice just to be able to recreate, in even just a tiny way, those like separate stages of a night out. And yeah, I guess like a performance, I guess it's the separate acts of the night out.
Yeah, like there's the different like modes that you get into. It's like the dressing up, it's the queuing, it's then the like you say, getting your hand stamped and the bouncer checking your ID. And then it's the queuing at the bar to buy a drink.
Yeah.
And sort of waiting, and then like either stashing your coat in a corner or paying for the cloakroom, and then getting on the dance floor and your favorite song coming on. And you can pull some of those experiences into your at-home stuff. And yeah, that I remember you describing that night out before. It's always sounded great, because that was a night out as a night in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like there's a slight subtle difference, I guess, between the two, and they can sit alongside each other. I think you could do both, and I think I'm hopeful in a world beyond just on our screens that you could have both experiences. You could create spaces for yourself online and in person.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were plenty of times when we had sort of nights out over Zoom with a bunch of different friends. And right at the beginning, I remember thinking, like, I hope that we still do this once we can go back into clubs. I hope that we can still do this as well, because like it's a chance to see a bunch of different people that you maybe wouldn't necessarily be able to see all at the same time anyway. And yeah, I think the main thing that I hope happens is it feels like there's been so much that in like real life clubbing can learn from this like online clubbing. I guess the ethos that we were chatting about before, of it being like safe spaces and being run by marginalized people and celebrating underground cultures, that maybe real life clubbing or maybe more mainstream clubs have lost in recent years.
Yeah, I sort of wanted to touch on that in sort of a historical sense as well, like, because so this is a picture from the Loft in New York in the sort of mid-70s, and these were like basically almost a mixture between a club and an at-home dance party. So this is in Mike Macuso's loft. He had a loft, and he held these parties called Love Saves the Day, and they would sort of be invite only for members of the sort of queer and Black community in sort of New York. And I feel like it's somewhere in between the at-home club and the like in real life club, because they were these spaces again that were safe spaces. Like there weren't many places where Black gay men could go out dancing in the 70s and feel safe. And he opened up his loft to this sort of community, and they sort of were known for having really good sound sets, and like he would stick up a disco ball, and like it was sort of a mixture of someone's house and also a club. And it's funny that we've sort of forgotten that in the history of clubbing, that like actually these places came out of the home, that like house music is called house music because it started in people's houses. So I guess it, like you're saying, it's that blending really that what maybe we're sort of both hopeful for is a future where sort of marginalized communities, these spaces they've grown online because of the pandemic, or sort of nurtured online, even if they were in person before, they can continue to have those spaces beyond that in a kind of new future, beyond the kind of beyond the pandemic. And you pulled up this quote as well, which I think is lovely, that I mean, if you want to read, you can, but there's no
I'll go for it. We can talk endlessly about the difficulties in having open conversations about mental health and neurodivergence in non-white communities, and how that is amplified when you are queer or gender non-conforming. And even if you break beyond internal stigmas about seeking help, often this help is expensive and untenable. While online discourse is useful in regards to finding communities and resources, there is something sincerely nourishing about being in a space in real life where, even if it's not constantly being spoken about, once you have settled into it, you feel deep down that there is no real fear of any of those things being an issue. And I can't read the last of it because of that. You feel safe even without the social comfort, the social blanket of alcohol.
Yeah, which I think sort of sums up, it goes full circle, right? So Aisha in that quote is kind of saying the same thing as like that they had in the 70s in these like original club experiences, is that like there's nothing beats that space for being together as a marginalized community and finding somewhere that is beyond the reaches of other people, but it makes you feel at home, like that. You just feel like yourself. It
feels like such an important space for safe and like sincere self-expression, and a space to be able to experiment with that, I guess, because of that like unique kind of balance between being in a community and also feeling kind of almost like you're alone. But sorry, I got distracted there. That it's like it allows for that like experimentation, to be able to like test, I don't know, I guess test the waters a little bit. Maybe this isn't true, but it feels for me sometimes, I felt that like I guess going back to dressing up, there's something particularly freeing about being in a space like that, that I feel reading rooms really, really had perfectly. I've been able to like test the waters of self-expression and take things that you might only have done in your living room, say like a certain way of dancing that might look ridiculous, or wearing clothes that you might be self-conscious about wearing. Being able to go to a club night where you know that you feel safe and like in your own community to experiment with like wearing those clothes or dancing that way and with other people. And it sort of is like I don't know, I've felt that it's been a nice way to, I guess, just figure out how much of my private self I can make a public self, I think. I don't know if any of that made sense. I think I've realised all of that as I was talking. So apologies if
but I think it's come across in some of your artwork as well, that sense of that through dance and through that expression, it gives you that sense of playing with that freedom and that kind of like it's your own, but like isn't anyone else's, but also can be public but can be private. And I think that's what both online and in real life clubs can give you. Like you say, you can start in one and progress to the other, or go the opposite way. Maybe you're someone who like goes to a club night in person and it's like, actually this isn't for me, and then really enjoys being on your own at home and getting dressed up and dancing by yourself or with like two people in your flat, because that's actually more who you are as a person, rather than being like someone who's amazing at having like this massive night out. And I think that's what's so exciting about these sort of smaller spaces. They can give you that ability to kind of enjoy just being with people who you know share that same sort of like, hey, it's okay to be a bit different or a bit like expressing yourself in a different way. I think that's something we all kind of look for when we go out, is that feeling of like shared community or shared understanding with other people. And we talked about other nights that do that as well. Like this is one, it's called Pussy Palace, which if you Google, I mean, it comes up with other things first. So always put sort of club night in the brackets. But their whole ethos, I think you mentioned this as well in some conversations we've had before, that they kind of have like a kind of set of rules for people to, not rules, but kind of like a shared space policy for their sort of nights as well. And that it's sort of helped them to kind of create spaces that feel safe for the women or the non-binary people attending. And it's also meant that they've been able to do things like, I pulled up the self-care as warfare thing. I thought it was really important and a really amazing thing, that kind of a club night can also become a place where you're also helping out other people, that you having a boogie is somewhere that then, you know, helps kind of give self-care to other people in other parts of the world, or other people who don't have the same resources you have. And I think there's something amazing about that community then kind of like becoming one that has other benefits to it, like that it's like it doesn't necessarily just have to be about dancing. It can be about suddenly you meet people through it who then you can kind of like create this space for activism or for inclusion or identity forming as well.
I guess it's like it opens up the opportunity for people who, like you said, might not be able to go to a club night, who might not feel safe for whatever reason, who might have like physical disabilities or accessibility needs or issues with overstimulation, who might struggle to go to like a real life club, but are able to join these things online. And that opens up the opportunity to be able to be part of a culture, whether or not you feel safe, like showing even your own face. It's a chance to access this community and to feel the love and support of that community that you might not, for whatever reason, be able to access without being online.
For sure, yeah.
There's, Queer House Party is another one of these nights. They had a British Sign Language interpreter as well, which is like another thing. Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never seen that
in a real club. Yeah.
No. And it's, I feel like it's something that isn't really considered, is how to make the club experience accessible to people with who are deaf or hearing impaired. And maybe that would be difficult, I guess, in a real night out. I don't really know what the practicalities of that would be, but the fact that is can be made fully accessible quite easily on a Zoom night is brilliant, and definitely is something that should be carried through to post-COVID.
World, yeah. What do you think then are like sort of 3 things that you would definitely like to see carried forward, and 3 things you definitely miss from a real club?
3.
Or you could go 5. Go 5 if you want to do top 5s.
No, let's just go 3. I think the things I miss are sweat, the toilets, like the conversations you had having with people in the toilets, and smoking areas. Just, I guess, conversations there as well. Sweat just encompasses like the dancing and the sharing of sweat. I'm gonna stop talking about sweat. And the things that I hope are continued, I guess, just the existence of online club nights, and a culture of being able to access nights in, like, on the other side of the world. And the culture and ethos that most of these club nights have, that are about inclusivity and accessibility and care, and that being carried on into real life clubs. I know that like lots of club nights definitely had that ethos in place already, but it would be nice if other ones could like set up and take notice. And no police.
Yeah, I think that's probably
none of that. I think that the success of the online club night, I think, is a testament to why these spaces need to be fully safe, and having police in them is quite clearly not the best way to do that.
No, like harassment means no harassment from everyone. I think the history of queer culture and Black and sort of marginalised community culture is that like actually those presences don't make you safer, they make you less safe. I think you want those spaces to feel like you can turn up and you're not going to be harassed for whatever it is. So I definitely agree with you on that one. That's one on the hit list for me.
Yeah.
No plain clothes police.
What about you?
What do I miss? I miss that everyone's suddenly realizing it's their favorite song and like getting on the dance floor and making that circle of people. I don't know if that's still a thing that I still love that. Like going out with a group of people and you put your bags in the middle and everyone makes a circle and you dance around the bags. I miss that. That's definitely something I miss. I think yeah, it's the same. I miss the kind of like the sort of fun and the drama of getting ready for a night out and going to a specific night as well, like whether that's I don't know, like something like Pussy Palace or like Aphrodite, or like somewhere that you know where other people like you are going to be and that you can just like, get loose a bit is quite appealing. And me and my flatmate have talked about that, how we sort of have this whole like ambition to like get completely glittered up and go on the biggest LGBT night out we could imagine, with just a big posse of people afterwards. I guess things that I've really enjoyed is that like you say, that shared experience with people all around the world that I don't think you can get in person, and that's kind of a real positive for the online experience, is that kind of you can just be with anyone anywhere, and also that you can be by yourself. Like if you've got into the zone enough, you could just be you in your living room, and you don't even have to turn on your camera or turn on a microphone. You could just stream something and just be there for yourself. And I think that's really appealing, because like I think we don't appreciate that as something, but actually that kind of like solo moment on the dance floor when you're completely lost in the music is something you can have at home, and that's really special and unique for you. I think that's like I think that's why I picked the title Dancing with Myself for this talk, is because I think that's something that, you know, is just for you, and it doesn't have to be with anyone else. It can be, and that's when it's great too, and you can have the sweaty red stripiness, but like you can also just have that moment and you're kind of at one, I guess. I think
there's definitely been, in like pre-COVID times, nights when I've sort of wanted the experience and the atmosphere of a night out, but not necessarily had like the social capacity or the emotional capacity to actually go on a night out with people. And so either had to like go along but not really feel comfortable there because it would have been a day that I just needed to be myself, or stayed at home and felt like I was missing out on it. So the opportunity to be able to have a club night at home is like the perfect way to not have that feeling of like having to pick between having fun and being alone. Like I can do both of those things at once.
Okay, and the last thing I thought I was going to ask you, which it doesn't have to be the definitive list, but if in a kind of Nick Hornby style, what are your top 5 at home dancing tracks, Saoirse?
So I was thinking about this earlier, and the only one that comes straight to my mind is Black by Grove, who actually performed that night we went out before Field Music, and we missed them and I was raging. But anyway, they've got a new EP out, and their song Black is unreal. Another one would be Call Me By Your Name by Lil Nas X.
Nice.
That's a good one. What else? Move On Up by Curtis Mayfield.
Yeah, that's it. That I think that gets everyone on the dance floor, right?
Yeah. I actually made a playlist and I don't remember what's on it. What are yours? And then I'll come back to it.
Again, like it's really hard to narrow it down, right? Like it's something like both everything and nothing. I think anything by Talking Heads always just gets me up and moving. Like it's about the way they make music. You could just like, and you can sort of shout along to it, which I think is quite appealing because I can't sing. So anything Talking Heads, any song by Talking Heads. I think Dancing in the Dark by Bruce Springsteen, that always gets me. I think again, it's about that experience of like, just want to be on the dance floor and it doesn't matter, who or what for. Perfume Genius, Perfume Genius's last album, really great. Really good. Just like, again, sort of proper queer dance tunes that just like absolutely get going. I think anything by Gil Scott-Heron as well. Gil Scott-Heron gets me moving.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And then obviously the obvious choice being Parliament or Funkadelic. I think like it just kind of like you can't not dance. Like it's a bit like James Brown. It's sort of like I just kind of go for it. Yeah,
Yeah, Funkadelics was on my list too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who else. Yeah, it's like there's so many, it's really hard to narrow it down.
I've got Tony Allen and also Fela Kuti. Almost anything by those will get me moving. One of my favorites at the moment is Bomb Bomb by Songhai Blues, but the Mike Lindsay remix is like a good one for the hips. Really, anything that makes my hips move.
Yeah,
I think is exactly what I want. There's so many.
No, definitely. Yeah, I feel like we could make an epic playlist off the back of this story.
Yeah. I will post a playlist probably on my Instagram at some point in the next few days if anyone cares to know what our music taste is like. It'll be there because I really love making playlists, so why not?
Oh, I should also say that actually something we've done for the exhibition, which I think is really exciting, is we've commissioned, I think, something like 7 different DJs and musicians and artists to create us playlists that they would put together for going before a night out, like as if like they were getting ready. So like that, like to kind of when you come into the museum, they'll be playing, so that like you have that experience of like you're walking up to the club. It's kind of like it's slightly cheesy, but I guess kind of amazing. But yeah, and then
I'm so excited to see it.
I'm really excited for it to be open. Because basically you kind of come up the stairs. There's a big neon flashing Night Fever sign. And then you have we have like yellow barriers as if it's a club. And we were sort of joking with the visitor assistants yesterday that maybe they need to dress like bouncers and we can kind of like so you have to throw you in and then get them in as a bouncer. Or maybe Dan, maybe we could just get your flatmate and they can reenact being a bouncer for us. I guess, I think, there's something, I think, amazing about like being able to work on the show and it being about something that everyone has an experience of. I think that's something I've realized whilst we've been doing it is that it's like everyone has a story about an epic night out and a relationship to clubbing or dancing in some format. And so it's quite nice that people want to share that with you, whether it's their playlist or whether it's in person.
Yeah.
I think Nicole's coming back on for questions.
Yeah, we've got a few that have come through in the Q&A, so I'll just jump straight in if that's all right. Do you think that this will continue when clubs reopen and have a long-term effect, or do you think that clubs will be busier than ever?
Ooh, good question.
I think clubs will definitely be busier. Like there'll be no shortage of people desperate to get back to clubbing. But yeah, I do hope that it does continue, that it's a sort of blended approach. The same as, I guess, much of the cultural output that we've experienced over the past year. I hope that it like continues to be blended because it just makes things so much more accessible, and it just, there's a huge like subsection of society who are able to experience things that maybe wouldn't otherwise. And so if we've managed to find a way to make things accessible for people, then it would be so terrible if that just sort of stopped and we decided that we didn't want to continue making things accessible. I
think there'll be some nervousness as well. I think some people won't want to rush back to clubs, and maybe there'll be this blended period of time when people do both. And hopefully then, like Saoirse says, then it continues and you have people having the option of both, or that clubs will maybe live stream themselves at the same time as being live. That would be a really interesting concept. I definitely love to go to some clubs remotely. I think that would be really fun, especially ones that I've seen in the exhibition or research for the exhibition. It's been like, God, I wish I could get to go there, and I definitely won't get to. So it'd be amazing if we could like go remotely, right? Like kind of a
The next question is, do you know of any mainstream clubs offering digital club nights as a way to kind of gently encourage this sense of community that we're talking about in a lot of the kind of DIY spaces?
I think so. I didn't get to touch on it, but United We Stream actually is probably a good example of that. So they kind of recreated and actually had some of the DJs from nights like Hacienda and sort of further into the more modern end of the Manchester club scene. And that is a much more sort of less small communities, more bigger experience. And I think those are still available on their website, actually, a lot of the club nights that they've done. And then they use the money to then pay the clubs that are still kind of in, obviously, furlough and lockdown now. So yeah, United We Stream is what I would recommend for that one.
Yeah, I think there was I know that I saw Sub Club and some other kind of bigger Scottish clubs that were on there as well doing, and I think some of those streams are still available, so please do check them out. So
someone just commented, sorry, just on that, someone just commented Stream the Scene, which I hadn't heard of, but yeah, that looks cool too, just in case anyone didn't see that comment.
Cool. We've talked quite a bit about accessibility around clubbing and the fact that that's really increased through this kind of shift to online. There's a question saying, how could clubs work better for people of all ages?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one, because there's a film in the exhibition which is about the unders night at Sub Club, and it made me think that that's something that sort of has died out a bit, actually, in the last decade, is that sense of like a night out for people who are like, so I don't know,
underage.
Yeah, like 15 to 18 or 14 to 18. And I think it would be nice if there was, you kind of hope, again, it could be a blended experience online and in real life that could reimagine that, because these places do need to open themselves up to different people and different age ranges. So maybe a way of doing that is to have more kind of like younger experiences. I guess for clubs, what's tricky with that is that obviously what they make money on is the alcohol they're selling. And if you're doing unders nights, you then have to have a cover charge. And so it's making that accessible to people.
I read the Misery, the sober queer party that we were talking about, we gave the quote about. I can't remember exactly what they said, but that touched on, I guess, that issue that there wasn't alcohol being sold, but how to get around that and still make it financially viable and sustainable. So yeah, it's definitely possible and worth it. And I guess if we're talking about all ages, then we have to include older people, and the fact that so many clubs just aren't, maybe not deliberately aren't accessible, but are maybe just, I don't know, give a front that they're too cool to have people there over a certain age, which is something I loved about reading rooms, because that was just never the case.
I remember growing up, actually, there was a club night that my mum used to go to called Mother Funkers, which was set up by a group of mums so they could kind of go and dance in their own safe space. And I wonder if maybe actually, not necessarily just for marginalised communities, but everyone now has the opportunity to reshape these things in their own making, because you can group together people online through like a Facebook group or like a kind of chat or a WhatsApp group and do this for yourself. I also know a friend in Edinburgh who, like, they all collectively hire a babysitter, and then they hire out a sort of a church hall, and they'll just put on their own mini raves for like sort of people in their 40s and 50s. And I sort of think that's maybe something that like post-pandemic people want to do, because they'll want to know who they're dancing with, maybe. So maybe a group of friends might be something people want to do.
Yeah, I wonder if like a more formalized version of that could happen, where it's like a night care, I guess, instead of like a daycare, where there's just babysitters who are specifically there for parents who want to have a night out. That would be brilliant.
I think there's definitely a conversation to be had thinking about unders nights and thinking about accessibility, and also thinking about Queer House Party and the way that they approach some of the stuff they talk about in the night. There's kind of a decentralization of alcohol as like a really key part of clubbing, because it's the two only really go hand in hand, because it's a capitalist model, maybe, and actually maybe kind of a lot of
be free a bit. I think it's maybe you have to create a space that lets people be free and feel unpressurized to perform. And because I think ultimately the role that drugs and alcohol play in clubbing is about giving people that like disconnection from that anxiety about performing, and maybe it's about creating spaces that kind of just give you that freedom of that without those things.
I mean, they're designed in a way that brings you that kind of feeling of relaxation and comfortability without having to have these other stimulants. And I guess that maybe that's, when we're talking about some of these kind of more DIY community-based organising, they come with that because they are about community and they are about kind of centralising that element, and then that in turn lowers the requirement. if that makes sense, to
Yeah,
try and make yourself feel comfortable.
Yeah, if you feel like comfortable and safe with a group of people, then yeah, there's often no need to drink whatsoever, even as someone who does drink alcohol. I feel like that's a testament to the safety of a space, is whether you feel like you need to drink.
Yeah. So we are very nearly out of time, but I think we've got time for one more question. And I'm going to go with, what for you would the best club in the world look like?
First session.
Oh, it would. Oh my goodness. That feels like an important question. I feel like I need to get it right.
I mean,
there'd be loads of queer people, and there'd be loads of Black and other POC people, and it would be, everyone would be smiling and everyone would be really nice to each other, and the toilets would be full of compliments, and the music would be really, really funky, and everyone would be really fabulous.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it in like a kind of like series of the best bits of places I've been, I would say, or things that I've researched for the exhibition actually as well. So some of the energy of Paradise Garage and the DIY-ness if it was just in a garage, and the fact it had Keith Haring murals. Who doesn't want to dance with a Keith Haring mural in the background? I think some of the energy and inclusivity of some of the tents at Glastonbury, like some in the dance fields, and some of the kind of, yeah, like you say, the kind of queer and like Black and POC people who just get to be themselves. And then the funkiness of a really proper, like amazing, massive sound system and massive disco ball and lots of coloured like lights everywhere. And sort of that combination, I think, is what I would look for in a sort of space that I'd want to go clubbing. Oh, and maybe like some very cheesy indie disco vibes as well, because I have a bit of a kind of like love for that as well. So
maybe you could have like two separate rooms.
Yeah, like
I remember once at Pout, Polo, is it, in Glasgow? They had like the main dance floor that was just really cheesy mainstream pop music, and then they had this really tiny room off to the side that was like noughties, hip hop and R&B, and it was just so perfect to be able to go from one to the other.
That's good. Oh, and we should have a chill out room as well, because you talked about that with like the smoking area. There would need to be like a beanbaggy 60s vibey sort of space that you could just have a bit of a chillax with other people.
Yeah, a space where you could go if you didn't want to be bothered by people. Say if you got to a point in the night where you'd getting overwhelmed by there being so many people or having to have a conversation, like a space where you could go to where everyone just knew not to talk to you at that point. That would be very useful.
Almost like a loud, quiet room where you can hear music but you don't have to engage.
Yes,
absolutely.
That's it. Yeah.
I am just going to throw my 2 cents in about the toilets, because I think that it's, you know, one of the most vital parts of any club. I think it's just like being able to be in that space and feel really kind of, again, that's where I feel like a lot of the community comes together, because it's like everyone's just, it's a moment outside of the dancing, but that's kind of like in the light, because you've got these kind of really weird dynamics between like toilet lighting and then going back into a nightclub, and the experience of like stepping out of it for a second, and the people that you meet and talk to while you're slightly out of it and then you go back in, has always been one of my favourite bits.
Yeah, it is good. I feel like I gained a lot of confidence, specifically thanks to people I spoke to in toilets at reading rooms.
I think one thing we would say though is that I guess that's not everyone's experience. Like,
no, it's not.
Thinking of like trans communities and how like that would be really difficult to have that like joyful toilet-based experience. But then that's the bonus of if you did it within a confined kind of queer night, that you'd know you would have that experience. You'd totally be able to have those like silly chats in the toilet, because you just wouldn't be thinking about it in the same way. So
that would definitely be another aspect to the ideal perfect club.
And a friendly bouncer with banter also would find that really funny. Like just someone on the door who's got good chat, because then at least if you're waiting to get in, you've got some like good chat that doesn't feel weird, but it's just funny. Like a comedian, maybe a comedian as a bouncer would be quite good, right? Like warm up the crowd.
You're curating the queue now.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that is pretty much about what we have time for. unfortunately. Unless you guys have any last comments you want to make?
No.
To go.
Just want to say that's a really nice comment from Jill. Yeah, I've really enjoyed this talk. I think I will fully acknowledge I'm normally quite nervous for these sort of things, but it's been really
me too.
So yeah, thanks for joining us, for us just sort of chatting about our experiences online, really.
Yeah, I guess my final note would be that we again aren't experts, and if anyone does have any anything to add that's you think we might be interested in, please do let us know. That would be really nice to hear other people's takes on things.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to welcoming you back to the museum and sharing that nostalgia for clubbing with all of you. Yeah.
Okay, if I can just invite you guys to turn your video and audio off, I'll just do a couple of closing notes and then we will finish for the day. Bye, Saoirse. So yeah, thanks to our speakers. It was a really lovely talk. Thanks for all the nice comments. It was lovely to have you all here. Just to say, please do check out our website for all of our other upcoming talks and events. We've just released some night theatre programme that you might be interested in. In particular, we are having our own virtual club night on Friday, the 7th of May. It's free. It's called Tailgate and the Beat Goes On. And it's going to be beaming remotely into your hearts and minds. So please do come along. You can book a ticket. You can book a free ticket via our website. And also we're going to be having Queer House Party hosting our after party, who are renowned for iconic queer throwdowns, and they're an award-winning virtual community space. And they are broadcasting for our after party. We will also have BSL interpreting, audio description and live captioning at that after party. So please do come along. Thanks very much.